What's going on, guys? It is Glake here. FPS, or first-person shooter esports, are completely blowing up now. Like, they're completely in the limelight, right? With Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and even Halo 5 Guardians fully on the big stage. They all have their own leagues now. The scene is completely blowing up, and with that said, a lot of new players are getting involved. One thing that I've noticed that a lot of newer players are lacking a lot of, in my opinion, crucial elements to becoming a better FPS competitor. With that said, I decided to make a video, basically a small little video, hopefully this turns out small, compiling my my personal top 5 tips to becoming a better FPS competitive player. So let's jump right into it. Tip number 1, communication is key. Having strong in-game social skills are extremely important. It is the key to being successful in competitive shooters. Without strong communication, you cannot operate properly as a team. And in an environment where teams and players or individual players are really evenly matched when it comes to their skill levels, having successful communication in your team is kind of like the tiebreaker. It's the must-have component that will really determine whether you lose a game or whether you will win a game convincingly. It's an extremely important factor to obtain. So if you're a new player, make sure you are focusing on establishing a really good, establishing those communication foundations with your teammates or with your fellow team, or just even when you're in competitive lobbies online. It's really important to communicate with your teams. I know a lot of people may troll a lot online, you know, people on voice chat, they want to be crazy sometimes, but if you ever come across those serious players, those players who really want to get into the nitty-gritty, who really want to win, it's important to communicate with them. That is awesome, perfect, very efficient practice to get your in-game communication down. On to tip number 2. Learn the map. So learning the maps is by far, in my opinion, one of the most at least important things you can do to succeed as a individual player at the very least. Knowing the ins and outs of a map is really your secret bullet. Holding down a specific position or getting to one area of the map before your opponent does can truly turn the tides of an entire match. So it's extremely important that you're familiar with the maps that you are playing on, that you're familiar with the maps that are in rotation. You know, I know certain tournaments might have a ban system, so even when there's a ban system and you think a map is going to be commonly banned, it's still really important to learn that map, learn how to play on it. Can't be lazy with this, because you never know, your opposing team might, you know, counterpick a map that you feel that you don't feel comfortable playing on. You might be forced to play on it anyway. So learning maps is extremely important. If you want to dominate all game, you could be terrible at aiming, you can be terrible with your guns, you can be terrible with the weapon you're currently using, but if you are able to hold down a very prominent position in a map, you really don't even have to be that good of a gunfighter, because if you're able to hold down a certain position on a map where you have more of an advantage in a gunfight over your opponent, odds are, just because you have that specific advantage, you will be able to win the game a lot more convincingly, rather than if you were to be playing against your opponent where neither of you had the map control, or, you know, if they had map control. So learn your maps. Tip number 3, learn to be flexible. Now, a lot of shooters nowadays require players to play a specific role during a match, whether that be more of an offensive based role, a more defensive based role, or even a support role, even though, you know, that's kind of like a MOBA thing. Either way, each role in shooters most of the time really correspond to the type of weapon that you're using, or the type of area that you are staying in or holding down, or are keeping an eye out on a given map. Regardless of that, you want to be flexible. So that may mean learning weapons that you're not very familiar with. Now, I know this is one thing that I like to gripe on players about a lot, is because a lot of people will find that one weapon. It might be a top tier weapon, it might be a weapon that's really commonly used in pubs. They might find that one weapon and just stick with it. That is the only weapon they play because they're able to get kills with it. They won't learn any other weapons. Don't do that. That's the worst thing you could possibly do as a player. I know going going in pubs and going 30-2 and going 30-0 and all that good stuff is extremely fun, and just bodying people with the weapon that you're good with. But if you are looking to improve as a competitive player, it's really important that you're learning weapons. And when it comes to, you know, playing on maps, like I said in tip number 2, it's also important that you are focusing on other areas of the map as well, rather than those key power points or those key corners that everybody likes to go to at the beginning of every match. It's also important to know that when you're flexible, you can switch roles in the team, and it's a really good mix up to kind of mix up your opponents. It'll make them think, well, it'll kind of force them to fight against your personal playstyle. Say you started a match and one of your other teammates were doing a specific role, but during the next match you two swap roles. Your opponents have to deal with your playstyle, your personal playstyle in that given role, which forces them to adapt. So I think this is also a really good strategy. Another reason why you want to be flexible is, say you have a teammate that's sick one day or during an event or something, or even you need a substitute, or even if a teammate leaves the team and you might need to take up that role. It's also really important to know specific roles, be really flexible with your roles, so if something like that does come up, you'll be able to cover it, and yeah, everybody's happy, right? Tip number 4 coming at you. Listen to your teammates. Now, we all have an ego, whether we want to admit it or not, and sometimes that ego may make us feel compelled to go with our own personal plan during a match rather than listening to one of our teammates or several of our teammates' plans within a game. Now, while this may entirely depend on the situation, it's also really important to listen to what your teammates are saying. It's also really important to be able to quickly react or quickly respond to what your teammates are saying, the plan that they're saying, the opinion that they're throwing, the suggestion that they're throwing mid-game, and also be able to voice your opinion as well. Like I said, this kind of ties back into tip number 1, the whole communication thing, but listening to your teammates is something that I feel like a lot of people want to focus on. Everybody wants to think that they're good, everybody wants to think that their ideas are the best, but when it comes to a team game, you have to properly communicate back and forth and be able to listen to each other. That's part of communication, is listening, so that's one thing you absolutely have to have nailed down. Tip number 5, chemistry. It's like a puzzle. It takes time. Now, in my opinion, team chemistry is the most important factor when playing a competitive shooter. Now, I have seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of players leave teams within weeks, even days, due to them apparently not feeling like they fit. And that relates to either them or their teammates. Now, while it's important to know what you want out of your fellow teammates before joining a team, it's also important to know that that chemistry, that click that you see a lot of top players have with their teammates is due to months, even years of practice, even years of time with their teammates. They don't really leave. They don't give up right when something is going wrong. They play one practice session one day and they just suddenly feel like this is not for them. They keep at it for days and days and days until they absolutely know 100% that there is nothing they can do as a team to improve together. Now, I know this is something a lot of players just do not have patience for, especially newer players, but you guys gotta understand that this chemistry, the reason why these top players are always winning, Optic Gaming, FaZe, I don't know, CLG, they're Halo. Yeah, CLG, because they won the Halo World Championship, so that's a good example. But the reason why these top players continuously win is because they have excellent chemistry. Yeah, their gun skills are good, yeah, all that other good stuff, but their chemistry is what really makes them stand out when compared to the other players. So if you really want to rise to the top, if you really want your team to rise to the top, if you're a team captain, if you're the team manager, team founder, really push for chemistry. Really motivate your players, talk to your players about chemistry, talk to them about how chemistry works, really try and get them motivated to stay on the team, and just work to get that chemistry building up. So more builds up, I promise you, you will become more of a prominent team. You will become a better player yourself, and you never know, your team just might become the next Optic Gaming. In conclusion, it's probably important to know that these things obviously are not all going to happen overnight. Each one of these tips you're going to have to, you know, practice daily every single time you practice with your fellow teammates. Even when you're playing by yourself or in lobbies, it's important to practice all these things. Get these things down because ultimately they're basically the fundamentals of playing a competitive shooter. So it's really important that you have these established before you get into a team and start looking to compete in tournaments. But with that said, I hope these tips came off as informative or helpful to you guys, especially you new players out there. It's probably important to note that I'm not a competitive FPS player myself. I mean, I'll do, you know, ranked games every now and then on Halo and Call of Duty. I don't really play Counter-Strike very much. I did used to play competitive shooters back in like what 2011, 2010 with Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and Halo Reach. So those were pretty much the only FPS games that I played competitively. A little bit of Modern Warfare 3 as well. But as of now, I'm not on a team or anything. But I do enjoy competitive shooters a lot, and I enjoy watching competitive shooters. I love watching FPS esports, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Halo 5, even Gears of War, even though it's not really considered a FPS. But all this stuff really applies to just shooting games in general. It's just that FPS games are, in my opinion, the most prominent form of esports shooting games. So that's why I, you know, titled the video that way. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to drop the video a like, comment if you really want to, leave your feedback, leave your remarks, your suggestions, all that good stuff, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. I would love you very much if you did so. But until the next video, guys, I will see you all later. Hopefully this came off as informative. Once again, you guys take care, keep on gaming, peace out.